Wow, this is quite a party, huh? And I mean, look at this spread. They actually sprang for artichoke dip. I'd be sparing with the lox over there, though. It's great the host ponied up for the smoked salmon, but you can really taste that it's farmed. How do you know the host, anyhow? Oh, all right, okay. And sorry, what was your name again? And what do you do for work? Oh, me, I work in tech. I don't like to brag about it too much, but I was the one who came up with the idea for Bumble Biz. You know, it was the parallel Bumble where you swiped left and right on business connections. I think it was ahead of its time. Bumble really helped daters say no to people with bad vibes in a low conflict and anonymous way. And I just put myself in the shoes of a business owner. You know, this random person is coming up to me online and he's like asking me for money. Those are some real bad vibes. You know, just swipe left. But I've moved on to greener pastures now. I'm working for Discardi at the moment. What's that? Oh, well, it's this brand new thing. Simply put, it's a job application rejection platform. It allows job applicants to pay a fee to receive a rejection letter, and the fee gets split between the employer and our platform. It's quite a promising prospect. How does that work? Well, I suppose it'll be easier if I just tell you the story of our founder. You see, when our founder was fresh out of Ivy, he made several applications for office jobs that didn't really go anywhere. And whenever he got an email from HR going, sorry, we've decided to go in another direction, he saw that they were quite happy to talk about other things. They'd tell him if there were other postings coming up, what sort of new products were getting ready. However, if he ever asked them, I'm wondering, what am I missing that led to my rejection here? What could I possibly do different next time around? That's when communications would instantly end. Total blackout. That's the one piece of info they would never give, like it was some big secret. And of course, this is if they had the courtesy to tell him he hadn't been picked in the first place. With lots of jobs, you find out you didn't get it because you just never get contacted. But our founder didn't let that get him down, oh no. He spent some time thinking about the business dynamics in play here. When someone gives you reasons that you weren't hired, it's basically advice. If someone just up and tells you what you need to do to get a job, you're basically giving them a roadmap to self-improvement. But this is the 21st century. If you tell someone they don't have enough experience with Excel to get hired, that's not just some social nicety anymore. In the business, that's what we call an actionable data insight. And those are gold in the 21st century economy. Entire corporations are built around finding them. They're called consulting firms. Data insights secret. You jealously guard them from competitors. If you ever share data insights, you're selling them for millions of dollars. That is why, whenever our founder asked why he wasn't hired, all those HR managers clammed up. Even if they didn't have the language for it, they knew down to a deep subconscious level that no employee worth their salt gives actionable data insights for free to some random guy off the street. I mean, you'd have your head on a pike. That's why our founder invented Discardi, to rationalize that part of the job market, streamline it. Now, every rejected applicant can pay for the privilege of a detailed rejection letter, and the whole incentive structure changes, Now, whenever you get turned down for a job, instead of navigating the prickly and often fruitless interaction of asking what you're lacking as an employee, you can just send $5 over. So imagine this. Somebody applies on LinkedIn to be a copywriter at a marketing firm, gets rejected. And then the firm offers them the opportunity to send $10 their way so they can find out why. A Discardi message will come to their inbox. They'll open up a digital envelope or maybe crack open a digital loot box. We poached some animators from Blizzard and we're looking for ways to use them. But whatever the medium, out comes a flashy message telling them, well, we didn't hire you because we don't like your vibe. Now, you're chuckling at the idea of paying $20 to find out that your vibes are off, because it seems a little silly, but that is critical info. What if the applicant really was perfectly qualified? Imagine they got rejected for that job and spent years going back to school to reskill. Then they find out bad vibes were the only reason they didn't get hired. When you compare it to the cost of a degree, isn't it better to pay $40 to find out that's all it was? Right now, Discardi is in its early phases. Currently, most Discardi messages are written by HR staff themselves, which is slow and unprofitable work. Once we can throw generative AI into the mix, though, things will speed right up. It may seem callous right now to pay $80 for an AI to say that your vibes are off, but in a few years it's going to be AI doing the hiring too. If you had a human writing the rejection letters at that point, you'd be paying for an inferior service. Once the whole rejection industry is automated and Discardi eventually replaces LinkedIn and Indeed entirely, that's when we're cooking with gas. If every applicant a business owner rejects is a chance to make $160, they're incentivized to create as many job openings as possible, especially since they don't have any obligation to actually hire anybody. You don't have a labor pool anymore. What you have is a passive income stream. Imagine. Every day a Discardi user logs in, hundreds of companies are firing up their AI models to generate jobs that fit their exact skills and interests so that they can get promptly turned down. Chief Officer of Hanging Out, Professional Millionaire, Unicorn and Leprechaun Wrangler. Every company on Earth will have an infinite number of job openings. It'll grow the economy. All three parties win here. Discardi gets its cut, job seekers win because they have so many more openings to apply for even if they don't get hired, and the $320 each employer gets from each rejection is a huge windfall for them. Well, at that point they won't be called employers anymore because they won't actually be employing anybody. They'll be called power users instead. Now, you may think that creating hundreds of thousands of fake job openings is immoral, but that's small-minded 20th century thinking. In the aggregate, it's good for the whole of society. Any random guy in a boardroom can tell you that the health of an economy isn't measured by how many people are employed. I mean, that's kind of childish. It's how many job openings there are at any time, because that means that the economy is more active. Hiring and firing someone provides only 2 economic actions. That's only 2 data points to analyze. That's pretty worthless. A job opening, on the other hand, may be able to get hundreds of applications. That's hundreds of exploitable data points, hundreds of people participating in the marketplace, even if nobody is actually even hired. In fact, hiring somebody is a true wasted opportunity. People won't apply for jobs anymore if they already have a job. Margaret Thatcher, infamously, said that there is no society. Now, obviously, that's ridiculous. No capitalist worth their salt truly believes that. Society exists, but it's an exclusive club that, by definition, needs to get more exclusive over time, or it loses its value. That's why I think BumbleBiz, my invention, needs a second bite at the apple. If the number of people actually within society is going to keep shrinking, the systems in place keeping people outside of it need to be efficient, automatic, and in the case of Discardi, monetized. Everything the economy does is a move towards this, minimizing employment and maximizing applications. To keep this machine running, we need to keep moving towards a future where nobody is employed, but everyone is still seeking work, and Discardi helps move that along. In the future, there will be only one man with one job, and the job will be job application rejector. He'll be seated in front of a big screen with a big red button saying no. And every time a face shows up on the screen, he'll push the no button and a new face will show up. I figure he'll have the job because he has the strongest wrists out of anybody and he can push the no button the fastest. The people will whiz off the screen faster and faster, the faces will get older and the faces will get thinner, and soon they're all rejected so fast that they merge into a single face that looks like everyone. Now that's just the first step in the plan, of course, because one day this man's wrists, once the strongest in the world, will break, so he won't be able to push the no button anymore. But he won't get anyone to take his place, because while there is a tiny yes button for emergencies, you'll need 2 guys to turn keys simultaneously, like you were launching a nuke, and that man with the key will have been downsized decades ago to make the rejection business more efficient. So at that point, society will be unable to reject or accept anyone into its ranks, and that, I believe, will be the start of a brand new social order. Or perhaps it is the end of all social order. I don't know. It's a future that none of us living today will ever be able to truly comprehend. But nonetheless, it is our solemn duty to make sure that it happens, no matter what. So our IPO is coming up.
Danger. 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 Danger.
Danger, danger, danger,
Danger. Danger.
danger! Anyone in danger?
Danger. Danger.
Danger.
Danger hasn't come home yet.
Danger! 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 I'm so afraid we're just never gonna see danger. She could be a danger to herself, Dad. Be a danger to us.
Danger.
Oh, yeah, baby. It is that time again. It is time for another episode of Infinite Danger, and believe you me, I am really fired up. Hey everybody, it's Will again. Just right off the top of the episode, there's a little bit of housekeeping. I made a mistake last episode when I said that Canada was 10,000 square kilometers. It's, actually 10 million square kilometers. Little bit of an error. I forgot to include some of our more recent annexations. Call me a Disney live-action production because I am a flubber. Or an absent-minded professor. Either one really works, actually. You hear that, Peru? We've got 10 million square kilometers. Doesn't matter how much arsenic you've got at your disposal. We have all this land, and you can't have it. Peru, you are losing a whole lot of critical allies. The next Paddington movie is actually going to be in Bolivia now. Danger Bay, Episode 12, Sunken Treasure, production code 1-012, making this the only production code in the entire series that is, accurate. The title for this app really does give away the game for what it's about, but this is a very special episode that I like quite a bit. But in order to explain why, I have to explain how it's so wrapped up in one particular guest actor here by the name of Ross Hagen. Ross Hagen, who is not to be confused with Hagen Beggs, has a very particular style, a very specific look and voice, and a very specific sort of career. You might remember Ross Hagen from movies such as The Hellcats, The Miniskirt Mob, Here Come the Brides, Angels, Wild Women, Melinda, Wonder Women, Super Cock. Alright, just to clarify here, Ross Hagen is an actor with a long and storied career, but it is a story of ill repute of some kind. Danger Bay may have been the cleanest show he ever worked for. There's a very big chunk of this man's career that is just pure uncut sleaze, which you may have seen on Red Letter Media or elsewhere. Many of Infinite Danger's listeners may simply know him as Landon Ricketts, the guy who teaches you Level 3 Deadeye in Red Dead Redemption. The voice he gives that character is for a very old, haggard man, and naturally you'd assume, well, this is his last role. He would be sort of haggard, as you'd expect. But really, his in-real-life voice hadn't changed from that since he was 20.
I gotta hand it to you, Doc. This is a hell of a layout you got here. You don't waste a damn thing.
It was also sort of a strange bookend for his career, which had started with westerns. Ross Hagen got his start acting in TV westerns when it was a big boom time, and he had the exact look for it and the exact voice for it. However, in a case of sheer nominative determinism, Ross Hagen, born Leland Lando Lilly, began to take successive L's. A very promising prospect for the Western genre, Ross Hagen showed up in Hollywood just in time for TV Westerns to take a plummet. After there was no more money to be made with Westerns, he did show up in the Elvis movie Speedway. He also had a brief run as the voice actor for the Party Marlin, but then had a long, pronounced stretch in his career dedicated to unabashed sleaze.
Ross Hagen is Mike Harbour. He'll work for anyone, do anything, if the price is right.
Mike is marked for death in everyone's book.
Nothing outright pornographic, but basically most of these movies would get put in theaters where if bare breasts weren't on the screen within 5 minutes, people would start to file out. This means that if, in the last episode, we had a supporting actor in an MST3K favorite, overdrawn at the memory bank, today we have the lead of a Riff Tracks favorite. Hagen plays the main male lead in Wonder Women, a movie so sweaty that it oozes off of the film. Having nothing to do with the comic book character, the titular Wonder Women were the bodyguards and foot soldiers of an evil female surgeon kidnapping prime human specimens so that super wealthy people could stick their brains in their bodies. Ross Hagen is the protagonist because in the world of the movie, the Wonder Women are invincible ass kickers until they face him, a misogynist who fucks good. That's really not much of an exaggeration of the plot. The movie was filmed entirely in Manila, in the Philippines, partially to create some instant production value through, location shooting. However, really the main point was to get away from the expenses behind making sure that you were properly following shooting laws, labor laws, animal abuse laws. There's a real cockfight in this movie, and it's in slow motion so you can catch every gory detail. I figure that's why Pete Rose had a stake in the film.
He's always been a winner.
There was not much of a budget for the action or stunt coordination on Wonder Women, apart from a single car chase scene which seems to go on for 20 whole minutes. This meant that, for the most part, the action in Wonder Women can be synopsized as Ross Hagen is in a powder blue suit with no shirt underneath. He's sweating in a way that is uncomfortable to watch, and he is just dashing randomly around the streets of Manila, firing his gun in different directions. Ross Hagen's look and his voice made him perfect for TV westerns, but stick him in a quasi-sci-fi exploitation movie, and you look at his performance and you just start going, what if a Virginia Slim was a guy who could sweat?
Beautiful, luscious, mysterious dolls, trained by the sinister dragon lady to do as they were told. They were killers, a sisterhood of death, but they were also women.
Now come on now, Doctor, you know I can do anything out of Johnny Walker Black. So if Ross Hagen was somebody who had this sort of resume, how did he end up on a fairly family-friendly show like Danger Bay? Well, money was tight, and they needed an actor, but they needed somebody who would be okay getting paid in cigarettes.
See the most lethal kung fu karate females take men apart piece by piece. Hi! Wonder Women, rated PG.
Nightshade, Illicit Dreams 2, Carnal Risk, Sorceress 2, The Temptress, The Escort 3, Super Cock, Prison Ship, it's a women's prison, Fugitive Rage, she's a fugitive from a women's prison, The Calendar Girl Killer, Bikini Drive-In, Attack of the 60-Foot Centerfold. So that's the main top-of-the-ticket guy, Ross Hagen, and you'll see as I talk about the episode how it sort of warps around what kind of actor he is, what kind of person he is. But we've got a bunch of other people that are recognizable names to Infinite Danger listeners at this point, the first off being the director, Michael Berry. We've gone over a good swath of Michael Berry's directorial efforts now, but I'll bring this little one up. Did you know there was a Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer show where they tried to pass BC off as the American antebellum South? Because they did.
Try looking back more on days that were slower when living came easy and neighbors were friends.
And Michael Berry worked on it. It was called Huckleberry Finn and His Friends, perhaps more popularly known by its alternate title, Die Abenteuer von Tom Sawyer und Huckleberry Finn, because this was a Canadian West German production. Now, normally I'd say that's why they could get away with calling Pacific Canada the antebellum South. The audience in mind wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I mean, that's a part of the world where the people living there can't even tell the difference between Schlager and real music. But to be entirely fair, the production crew did realize filming in Vancouver really would strain the audience's credulity. So instead they filmed in Delta. That's a whole bridge down from Vancouver. I mean, you want to portray the South. Delta is almost at the Canadian-US border. That's like as south as you can go. That's just the beauty of film tax credits, really. The power of free money lets every place in the world become just a moldable lump of clay for filmmakers. That's why you can watch The Naked City even today and feel certain that Jules Dassin filmed this whole movie on location in New York City, right? But nope, it's Jakarta. I really should also mention that Die Abentur von Huckleberry Finn is another example of how Da Vinci's Inquest has cast a very long shadow over this entire podcast. Huck Finn's actor in this show is Ian Tracy, who I recognize pretty instantly. He's got a very recognizable gap in his front teeth. He goes on to play what I would say is the lead cop character of that whole show. And when you contemplate it, I mean, oh man, in your youth you were a real Huck Finn, and by your 30s you're already a cop. Isn't that the way life always goes? On the writing end of things, Rick Drew returns to get the teleplay credit for this episode. There are a lot of extra things I could be saying about Rick Drew and his writing career. In fact, he is the lead writer of his own TV show, but it is sort of serendipitous that Rick Drew shows up here again at this particular moment. There has been a recent docu-series that has come out about the production of Reboot, a cartoon you are legally required to be a fan of if you are a 30-something Canadian, so it's fresh in people's mind at the moment. Rick Drew, you'll remember, was the absolute auteur behind Zix.
We are the great Hargok Empire. Our forces are growing, and soon all the galaxy will again tremble before us.
Why don't you just...
A show that was a brazen attempt to copy the success of Reboot. The parallels were so bolded and underlined that they hired the original production company, the by then moribund Mainframe Entertainment, to assist. Imagine you are the inventor of Pokemon, but your life's twists and turns have led you down such a bad road that you've ended up working in a factory in Hong Kong, and you're making a bunch of action figures of Pikachu except green. That's what I figure that must have felt like. However, that's not entirely fair. Back when I introduced it, I didn't really mention that there were some original elements to it. Yes, the premise of fighting for existence in a video game world remained, but unlike Reboot, the show would have characters swap back and forth between the video game world and the real world, and one of the main characters was a game world native, generating some sort of fish-out-of-water stories. This is important because if you are a legally mandated Reboot fan, you'll remember Mainframe attempted a revival show of the Reboot IP called The Guardian Code, which was very poorly received by fans. The main things that fans didn't like were 1, characters would swap back and forth between the video game world and the real world, and 2, that one of the characters was a game world native generating some fish-out-of-water stories. When Mainframe made this unpopular Guardian Code show, they just copied the people who were copying them. It's a knockoff of a knockoff of a knockoff of Tron, and I don't know if anybody else has picked up on this.
Have you had the chance to check out Reboot, The Guardian Code, and if so, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, they did. Yes, I've heard of this. I actually got through about 5 minutes of the first episode.
I think that there are more than enough people with YouTube channels who have the time to complain about Reboot the Guardian Code, but none of them have made this Zix connection. And I think it's because, well, who cares about Zix? Zix is a cartoon for children, not like Reboot. On the other end of the writing category, the story credit goes to a man by the name of Mark Strange. I could go on about his writing credits. He actually wrote pseudonymously for the Huck Finn show I mentioned just a few minutes earlier. But listen, this man was an actor too, and that side of Mark Strange's resume is far more interesting. Do you want me to talk about how he wrote a Beachcombers Christmas special? No? He wrote the narration for a couple of educational IMAX documentaries. You want to hear about that? No, you don't? Do you want to know that he was the Juggernaut?
Ooh, I'm scared. I better run. Tanks will break my bones, but tanks will never hurt me. Now get out of my way. You're violating my personal space.
Oh, you want the latter? Good. Okay, so yeah, he was the Juggernaut in the original 90s X-Men cartoon. He played Forge too. He was in the Silver Surfer cartoon as well. The very bizarre thing about Mark Strange's Marvel tenure is that he doesn't really seem to be a voice actor of any stripe. He just did work for Marvel and then dipped when they stopped making shows.
Leave him alone!
Jubilee, don't. What's she gonna do? Hit me with her diaper?
Past that, he went straight to the most strictly Canadian live-action fare there ever was. Fare like the Highlander series, The Raven.
To me, she was just a thief. Another day on the job. But she wasn't. She changed my life. Changed everything. And both of us knew from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same.
Yes, I knew we would get here eventually. The Highlander TV series was a mainstay in the Vancouver area as it was filming. It very almost was a show where Vancouver got to play itself, but alas no. At the very last moment, they decided the show must take place in Seacouver, Washington, USA, where our hero Duncan MacLeod ran a freestyle dojo. They were so scared about having a show actually take place in Vancouver that they basically conjured up an alternate universe where Vancouver was in the USA. And I mean, thinking about current events and the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads, I wouldn't really like to think about that alternate universe right now. But we don't actually get to talk about it past that, because this isn't Highlander the series. We're talking about Highlander: The Raven, a spin-off series starring one of the side characters of the program. A TV spin-off of a TV spin-off of a movie. Today's episode, it seems, has generation loss as a general theme. But again, it is based off of Highlander. Getting worse as you keep going is sort of part and parcel with the whole franchise. Highlander: The Raven was a fast flop. It lasted only a season. It didn't even have the decency to be filmed in Vancouver. They did that in Toronto, which meant that Mark Strange also had the opportunity to perform in a show called Forever Knight. So, full disclosure. Some time ago, I had a conversation with an acquaintance who was not a Canadian about Canadian television. And when he was talking about it, he went, well, the two main shows that I can think of that immediately give me a filmed in Canada vibe were Highlander the series and Forever Knight. And I told him, well, I haven't encountered them recently in my research, but it really seems like only a matter of time before they show up. Me and my big fucking mouth, I find a guy who was in both of them, and I have to extend my cast and crew section even more here. Forever Knight, that's Knight spelled with a K, tells us the tale of one Nick Knight, a homicide cop on the rough streets of Toronto. He cracks the case and he always gets his man, but what his fellow officers don't know is that he's hiding a terrible secret. He is an 800-year-old vampire.
Now he wants to be mortal again. To repay society for his sins. To emerge from his world of darkness. From his endless forever night.
So yeah, Forever Knight is a show that you can condense into 2 words and an exclamation point. Vampire Cop. The program is peak 1992, from the premise to the lead actor's Dave Coulier haircut to the Casio MIDI theme song. What's odd is that, for the premise, I wouldn't assert that it takes itself 100% seriously, but it is a show that is fully unapologetic about its premise. It is in love with its own aesthetic. And strangely enough, for a TV show that has this two-word high-concept pitch for it, the human drama is the priority many times, because with the budget that the show has, they don't really have a choice. All the vampire effects amount to on this show is cutting away from an actor and then cutting back, and they have green contact lenses on now. Practically nobody on Forever Night is winking at the camera about the show that they're in. In fact, one of the supporting actors on Forever Night actually won a Gemini Award for their performance that year. So let that sink in a little. The Vampire Cop Show has more national acclaim than many of your own favorite programs. Remember that phrase, National Award winner, Forever Night. If I was asked to synopsize what the Forever Night aesthetic is, I suppose I'd say at the end of almost every episode, there's some variation of Vampire Nick Knight looking in the corner and brooding.
You can't imagine what it's like.
Maybe not, but we all have our demons.
Not like this.
Going, tonight I may have put another criminal behind bars, yet the greatest sinner of all yet roams free. Me.
I haven't felt such a powerful need for human blood in a long time.
Then we cut to one of the recurring bad guy vampires, and he's going, "Oh, behold a pale horse."
And when night darkens the street, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. Paradise lost.
What's she gonna do? Hit me with her diaper?
Rated PG.
So the episode starts proper with imagery that really properly encapsulates the beauty of the Pacific Northwest. We've got a big close-up of the jumbled limbs of an octopus in a net.
Slippery guy, boy. That's enough exercise for you for today.
This octopus is Houdini, who we have actually seen before on the farm episode, only this time Houdini's a totally different species and also not potentially a corpse for most of the shooting.
We gotta do something about this cage. That's the second time this week that he's escaped.
That's why we call him Houdini.
Ah.
Like, a tank wasn't enough. They've got to put a cage around the tank as well. I was not expecting to see the Houdini octopus character carry over between episodes. At the very least, compared to the other episode, this octopus looks like it's actually alive, as I said, and it doesn't lay on top of a turtle to create a monstrosity that looks like it came out of Existenz or anything like that. So, big thumbs up, a marked improvement. It must be a very noisy part of the aquarium because all of the dialogue is totally ADR'd here, spaghetti western style. You know how they say that Vancouver is Hollywood North? Well, I suppose that Vancouver Aquarium is Cinecittà North. Huh? You see what I did there?
Ah.
Really, this scene is actually some subtle social commentary. Having a scene where Grant Roberts is struggling to deal with this octopus, it's actually very silently petitioning the government to nationalize the octopus catcher industry. I mean, this is 1984. These were all the bad old days. It's hard to believe, but there used to be a time where if you had an octopus wreaking havoc in your house and you didn't have the octopus catcher company's medallion on your door, their truck would just go past you. It's really mind-boggling to remember that. But really, this is just preamble. The premise of the episode is explained very quickly.
George went to see you in his office. He wants you to go on a treasure hunt.
What?
Grant gives a big what, and then the theme song starts. The way Grant incredulously goes what here is very great. He's done it a bunch of times. Every time that he expresses incredulity in Danger Bay, his voice goes up to the exact same register.
What? What? Wow!
We almost got shot!
What?
Other end of the theme song, we've got some more reused B-roll of the Vancouver Aquarium. Orcas are jumping in the air to eat herring suspended on a pole, as we've seen before. It seems, according to the muffled voiceover, they still don't really know at the Vancouver Aquarium why orcas jump. The last time they theorized why orcas jump, they were totally off base. Now they're making a guess that they are jumping as some kind of watery back scratch.
There's also probably a way in which the killer whale gives themselves a kind of a watery back scratch.
You know, we don't know that much about whales.
Grant storms into Dr. George Dunbar's office, who's got orcas swimming past his window as usual. Up till now, the cameras have always focused on the side of George's office where you see the orcas, understandably. But this is the first time we actually get to see what's on the opposite wall of his office. 2 giant photo portraits of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. You have to understand, this is Canada, and was our monarch. And their prominence in the aquarium further demonstrates that the Vancouver Aquarium truly is some sort of government entity in this world. I initially thought it was odd that these pictures of the royals were so large if they're going to be in somebody's private office. But you have to remember that these pictures on the wall are facing the orcas in the window. And so Hagen Beggs is basically helping them out. All Canadians have to pledge allegiance to a picture of the Queen every morning, and orcas are no exception.
George, what is all this about a treasure hunt? Some kind of a joke?
It's no joke. It's the real thing.
Already standing next to George Dunbar in his office is Ross Hagen's character, and he is already firing on all cylinders of the sleaze engine right out the gate. One look at him and I can smell the spray tan in the room. His outfits in this episode deserve special attention. Just as a forewarning, this ep is going to have a running "What is Ross Hagen wearing now?" segment, and this will be the first installment. Right now, Ross Hagen is wearing a cream 3-piece suit with black buttons, a mauve shirt, and a baby blue tie. He is ready to sell me a luxury timeshare right here and now. His eyebrows are already huge, and makeup has made them even huger. His outfit is already mogging everybody else in the room. Grant, for his part, is wearing his Gene Effect business casual button-up, but it seems in the intervening period between episodes, he's chickened out. He's decided that blue was too daring a color, and he's dyed it a more professional white.
It's no joke. It's the real thing.
Mr. Caldwell here is an independent marine researcher, but I understand you two know each other.
Oh yeah, we go way back. Just last week I threw him out of my office.
When I first heard that Ross Hagen's character was an independent marine researcher, which is said in a way that you can hear the scare quotes around it, initially it strained my credulity. The idea that marine biology has renegade bad boys, But this is expertly lampshaded and explained later on in Danger Bay, when later seasons detail the fact that marine biologists actually have a Ronin class in this world.
What's the matter, Martin? Can't you take a hint?
Well, you didn't give me much of a chance to lay my cards on the table, Grant.
Ross Hagen says like 2 lines, and I'm already going, man, this guy's voice is great. There is that line that some people have voices that can peel paint, and his voice is certainly gravelly enough to fit that designation, but this is like if there's a TikTok account dedicated to satisfying paint peels. The kind that, satisfying paint peels with Family Guy funny moments playing off in the corner. Grant is given a truly ancient-looking piece of parchment. It's all preserved in a special frame. There's obviously something important and historical about this piece of paper, and all Grant can muster up is a glib sigh.
Weigh the facts at hand. Look at this.
This is in Spanish.
Oh, okay, so basically it's worthless. I mean, nobody could really know what's written on that.
That, my friend, is a cargo manifest for the Sonora, an early 18th century Spanish naval vessel that went down in a storm off Galliano Island back in 1808. Now we know for a fact she was carrying a fortune in gold. The entire holdings of King Carlos IV's nephew, raw gold and uncut gems.
Now obviously, in North America at least, we associate Spanish explorers a lot more with the American West Coast, especially around California, but they really did come all the way up here to Vancouver and then well past it. There's actually a chunk of land near UBC that we still call Spanish Banks. Most people don't know this, but the Spanish actually got the idea for paella from the Coast Salish peoples. They gave them the recipe as a sort of a prank. Citing what we have from preserved oral tradition, I told these idiots to put shellfish and chicken in the same dish, and they actually bought it. I mean, I even told them you should mix peas in with it. Nothing goes better with the taste of fishy chicken than the wholesome taste of peas. And even then, they didn't get that I was joking. They asked me, oh, what kind of seasoning do you put on this? So I told them, what's the most prohibitively expensive seasoning you know of? These people really are morons. It rules that they're richer than the rest of the entire world.
That's nothing new, Martin. Divers have been searching for the Sonora for years.
But they didn't know what was on her.
Even way up north in BC and even the Yukon, the Spanish have the majority of this cultural mind share as far as colonialism is concerned. I think there has only ever been one bit of screen media I've encountered that actually deals with contact between First Nations people and the Russians, which is real. It was in an APTN fantasy show called Anish and the Sunrock. But you know, generally people just want to see the Spanish. They want to see the red feathers on the helmets. They want to see the guys with the pencil mustaches. If you're watching a story about European colonialism and a big imposing galleon is looming over the coast, if those letters on that boat are in Cyrillic, I mean, nobody's going to take you seriously. Grant Roberts, however, does not care about this history. He doesn't care about the Spanish. He's not really interested at all in looking for all this Spanish gold off of Galliano Island. He thinks it's a wild goose chase.
We can't afford to waste our limited resources on conjecture like this. I'm sorry, Martin. George, we're in the aquarium business.
That's right, George. We're in the aquarium business. Apprehending cattle rustlers and busting Soviet smuggling operations, those are fair game. But I draw the line at treasure hunts. The Vancouver Aquarium is strictly a law enforcement apparatus, George. Whether something is in the aquarium business or not in the aquarium business, of course, is not really Grant's motivation here. He actually has bad blood with this Ross Hagen character.
He has the credibility of a sand shark. Well, he's the research consultant I took with me on that coral formation study.
You mean the one that made the divers come up too fast?
Yes, that's the guy. Corner-cutting Caldwell, I called him. I've never seen a kid with the bends, George. It's not a pretty sight, believe me.
Now, this line about college kids getting the bends is actually sort of a sly, oblique reference to a movie in Ross Hagen's career. He was in a film called Sexy Scuba Party, which had the tagline on the poster, "Some divers worry about getting the bends, but these feisty co-eds have no problem with bending over." Interviewed later in life, Ross Hagen said of the film, "You know, Sexy Scuba Party is a pretty generic title, even for this genre film. But you have to realize they were forced to change the title right at the last minute. The producers decided that Muff Divers was too racy a name."
Rated PG.
Just not a pretty sight, believe me.
So, Grant steadfastly refuses to be involved in this whole treasure hunt fiasco. So, what is the thing that's going to happen in this episode that's going to force him to do it anyway? Well, for the second episode in a row, we've got a bunch of random pipes and valves getting all fucked up. The pipes shenanigans never end on this show.
I'd rather invest the money in a new boiler than risk it on Caldwell's harebrained treasure hunt.
A new boiler's gonna cost us thousands.
You'd think that from the last episode they'd have learned their lesson, but apparently the Amazon gallery in the Vancouver Aquarium is just perpetually on the edge of every specimen dying from temp fluctuations. Like, are all the sloths going to be dead by the next week? Well, we just don't know.
Just consider it.
Then you consider a new boiler, unless you're willing to risk losing the Amazon gallery to the temperature fluctuations.
But at the moment, all of this just exists to set the motivations for the next act. He does not officially say, oh, I'm going to do this treasure hunt, until a few minutes later. There has been a level of degradation to Grant's authority and powers as these episodes have moved through. We started with Grant constantly giving surgery to animals that didn't belong in the aquarium's purview, like they were birds, they were land mammals. At this stage, he's struggling to even get the bare minimum of maintenance done. Of course, we have to account for the fact that this is just a TV thing.
A new boiler's gonna cost us thousands.
Money in television has always been in a state of quantum flux. The money in any one character's wallet either multiplies itself or removes itself from the timeline based on what will make the script go. In one episode of a sitcom, the protagonist can't afford to buy his kid an action figure, so the child can learn a lesson about making the most with what you have. But then next episode, it's The Brady Bunch Goes to Monaco. And in general, this is an acceptable, permeable reality for television. Where it starts to fall apart is when a character is talking about a lack of funds, and then without comment, the show cuts to the private island mansion that they live in. The show moves us to Robert's Island as my sheer class resentment bubbles up to the surface. Just like one look at Grant Roberts' house, and you go, well, if you want money for a new boiler, why don't you take a pay cut, Grant? Like, okay, it's island property and they've got a private dock for 3 different boats, and you could even say that these are career necessities for him. But Robert's Island has a swimming pool with as much square footage as the house itself. And yet, my anger is soothed soon after by images of Danger the Otter bathing in the family kitchen sink. Oh, she's even got a little rubber ball she plays with. Oh, she's sticking her nose in a box of sponges. I think she's gonna dry herself off. I'm not mad at capitalism anymore. But Grant, the heartless monster, just doesn't care at all. His pet otter knows how to fully care for itself, and he just rolls his eyes sipping his coffee in the morning like, oh, fishing for attention again, are we? We hear the horn of that school boat again.
Hey, you two. Come on, get in gear. That school boat's going to be here any minute.
And just to restate this, we already know that Jonah and Nicole do not go to any school that would require them to take a boat to get there. Jonah and Nicole stay and learn at the Overlook Hotel with Seth Rogen and Nathan Fielder. Really, this scene only exists so that Grant can look at his morning paper, see a headline that he doesn't like, and go, what the hell, and storm into work.
What? George, have you seen this?
Yes, Mr. Caldwell and I are just discussing his little premature press release.
The Vancouver Sun erroneously confirms that the Vancouver Aquarium is already involved in Ross Hagen's little treasure hunt escapade, and that sparks an immediate confrontation with all the players involved. In the newspaper, it's a damn funny picture of Ross Hagen underneath that headline, too. He's just holding the framed piece of parchment and pointing at it with a massive smile on his face. It's like a Rapport-era Stephen Colbert, like pointing at one of his black friends. He really just looks bewildered. He's thinking, somebody is asking to take a photograph of me and there's no breasts around. What gives? I'm kidding, of course. Ross Hagen was actually very helpful and very instrumental in a lot of the stuff that had to do with this parchment manifest. He did a bunch to make sure that everything was as realistic as possible. This is a story relayed by one of the early prop masters, Balthazar Seagrape. They showed Ross Hagen the framed parchment that he was going to be looking at and talking over for most of the episode, and he said, no, you're really exaggerating the wear that this manifest would actually have. The Spanish Navy would have known that they were going to be on rough waters. This means that naval officers at this time would have written all of their important documents on far more durable material. Trust me, I know this stuff. I played a conquistador in the Busty Concubines of Montezuma.
They asked me about the treasure. Anything I might have mentioned about the aquarium was strictly off the record.
Grant is so incensed and furious at the idea that he might be forced to be involved in the plot of this episode. He's so mad, in fact, that he starts talking in a Brooklyn accent out of sheer confusion.
I had nothing to do with it, Grant.
Oh, really? Who's this in the picture? Your twin brother?
Ross Hagen, of course, is denying responsibility every step of the way.
Look, I kept a lid on this thing as long as I could.
In this scene, he is now wearing a suit jacket with very wide lapels, shoulder pads, and an onyx-crushed velvet shirt with an open collar. In effect, having sold you the luxury timeshare the day before, this is now the outfit he wears when he comes back around the next day to tell you, you know, the regulations around sex work are pretty lax in the country your timeshare is in, and I'm just saying I can make some phone calls if you're interested. But this argument never really truly concludes, because now we have to have yet another scene of random pipe and valve bullshit going wrong. Just a bunch of random steam and smoke and shit just float off from in camera, and then a head of engineering dashes in just calling for help.
Doc? Doc! Come quick! It's the boiler! This time it's gonna blow!
Despite the fact that the previous episode and this one are both revolving around a bunch of pipes and valves going wrong, there's a totally new engineering guy in this episode. He's basically a crusty old prospector type, and he talks in exactly that way. Wally, the engineer from the previous episode, is nowhere to be seen. In fact, he never shows up on the show again. Apparently, Wally was liked enough by his boss, Dr. George Dunbar, to be invited to his wedding, and yet evidently not liked enough to stay employed.
What's the matter with you?
Well, I'm a sucker for weddings.
Look, I keep trying to fill up the pressure, but it keeps filling up.
I suppose one of the advantages of having 2 episodes in a row that have on their script the exact same thing, a bunch of characters running around to see what's wrong with all the pipes in the aquarium, is that you get to see the different signatures of each director. If last episode's pipe fiasco was filmed like Das Boot, I suppose this one is filmed like Metropolis. Lots of Dutch angles and people struggling to turn valves, plus the fact that all this steam is in the air and there isn't really any logical place for it to be coming from. It's more of a German expressionist approach to the pipe scene so prevalent now in the aquarium crime genre. I guess this shows us that an auteurist vision for Danger Bay episodes is deeply important. Last episode, I said that all of the people working engineering in the Vancouver Aquarium all looked like they were Chief O'Brien and that they were basically treated as sci-fi engineers to some extent. If you don't believe me when I said that, note the fact that everybody is calling this engineering guy Chief. We don't ever know his name. He just gets called Chief.
What happened, Chief? That old tea kettle was gonna pop. That's what happened. How about it, George? I've gone over the books, Grant. We just can't come up with $12,000. Like that.
I gotta say again, I don't know, Grant. Rent your house out to some Hollywood executive for a weekend. Sleep on a friend's couch and you will get $12,000 and more.
If the Sonora has what I think she has on it, you guys can buy yourself 100 new boilers.
And so Grant finally relents. He agrees to slap a treasure hunt onto his customary yearly spawning inspection tour.
Maybe there's something down there, and maybe we'll find it. But I'm in charge of this operation, or there's no deal. Understood?
Whatever you say, Skipper.
And Ross Hagen gives him a big grin as if to say, "Look at me. I'm a handsome and trustworthy man." And as he smiles, it is revealed that his smile is disconcertingly white. Ross Hagen has got that Essex look, my friends. Absolutely no time wasted. The very next day, Grant is loading up the boat to go on a Spanish treasure expedition as a man who looks like Gene Shalit's son loads the hold with scuba tanks. They're shoving off from the North Vancouver wharf, actually, which is easier to film from because it's where most of the houseboats were at the time, so they're incurring less work stoppage, basically. Remember, these are the people with houseboats, not people using their boats as their houses. We've already seen the boat hobos in this show. These people are one step above them in the Vancouver social hierarchy. Remember, the Vancouverites who live in boats are the ones victimized by high rents. The people in houseboats are the ones making sure those rents stay high. Those are the upstanding citizens. Ross Hagen is on the docks and he is chatting with a TV interviewer. He's chatting up a TV interviewer, in fact.
Caldwell, what exactly will you be looking for out there on the Sonora? If you find the ship, that is.
Well, I'm not at liberty to say right now. But when we find it, you'll be the first to know.
Are you with us or not, Caldwell?
Coming, boss.
He is now wearing probably the best outfit in the entire show. He's got a raw leather patch jacket where each patch of leather has been stitched together with very puffy fur. Underneath that jacket, he's wearing a horizontal black and white striped long-sleeve tee, the kind that every stereotypical French man in movies wears. And tying it all together is a black speed racer ascot around his neck and a big Texan belt belt buckle around his waist. Oh, you know, it's actually pretty simple. The costuming department was trying to economize, so I simply offered to reuse some of my old duds from the filming of The Sensuous Adventures of Francois Coq-dur, Gigolo of the Laurentian Mountains. With a title like that, you know, it does sound borderline pornographic, but really, it was Canadian content, so we got a pretty good tax deal on it. He's dressed up like some sort of Parisian living in the Rocky Mountains in Texas somehow, but also is racing cars for a living. J'aime bien la peau d'un bois. Presque aussi que l'aile, chanter la Marseillaise et regarder le film Les Fablemans. Sprite mon gars, que fais-tu avec ce singe-là? Je dois tirer sur 20 personnes lors de ce course d'auto, quoi.
We're going out to conduct routine scientific experiments. Any treasure hunting we get into is strictly a side trip.
Does that mean you don't think you'll find the ship?
It means I don't know. Excuse me.
After the best-dressed man on the seven seas leaves port, we cut to commercial, and then when we come back, 5 whole days have passed. We have another exterior shot of Roberts Island, and it turns out that in their house there is a makeshift command system, a radio system for Grant's boat to get in touch with home base.
Come in, kids. North Star calling Roberts Island. Anybody home?
Roberts Island here. Come in, North Star. Hi, Dad. It's been 5 days now. Have you found anything yet?
The Thunderbirds parallels between Tracy Island and Roberts Island are rearing their head again here. But early on, Danger Bay is still technically a smaller budget show. The Roberts don't have the giant video picture frames to talk to each other through, until a few seasons later, of course.
Go ahead, John.
We have our first emergency call, Father.
Roberts Island here. Come in, North Star.
The new Fireflash Max 6 atomic airliner is in distress at London Airport.
Let me put it this way. Start warming up the crow for my dinner.
Okay, Scott. I'll organize that right away. Virgil, away you go.
Right, Father.
Right, Father. Okay, Father.
Hi, Dad.
Sure thing, Dad.
Yeah, Father.
See you later, Dad.
Right, Father.
Ultimately, the scene is presented this way to make sure that they don't have to film anything out on the open seas and thus balloon the budget. Throughout the scene when Grant is talking, they'll cut to a very distant image of a boat, filmed from on shore, of course, far enough away to hide the fact that the pilot of the boat isn't Grant and isn't even holding a radio receiver as he talks. Bit of a tragic story here, actually. The man standing in for Don Rhodes here, evidently the mental load of being Grant Roberts sort of was too much for his brain to handle. You know how in the 1800s there were all those French asylums with people who were claiming they were Napoleon? That basically happened here. Every day he'd do his hair the exact same way as John Rhodes, wear Don Rhodes' same sort of sweaters, chew John Rhodes' preferred brand of gum. He even claimed that he knew how to ride a horse. He kept a doll in his room that he kept practicing divorcing every day. To add some verisimilitude to the Roberts house, however, there are some framed adolescent pictures of Chris Crabb and Ocean Hellman on top of the radio. But since these are real photos taken in very different times and places, Ocean Hellman's got a very professionally done color headshot, or like a school photo, and Crabb's got a baby photo in total black and white. Now, you'd think that that'd make it an artsy photo or something shot on some kind of an antique, but no, every Chris Crabb photo till he's like 7 years old is just black and white. He just did that to cameras. Scientists think that he projected some sort of field out of his body. They don't really have any explanation for it. They were taking photos of him every day of his life for experiments ever since he was 6 months old. That's why he has such a natural screen presence. He's used to it.
Start warming up the crow for my dinner.
You found it? What is it, Dad? Gold?
That remains to be seen. Meet us at the aquarium.
All right. See you later, Dad. Out.
Cut to the Vancouver Aquarium, and they are hauling in a sopping wet black treasure chest using a complex system of chains and pulleys.
Careful now, boys. It weighs a ton. Watch the step.
Hey, don't drop it.
A real honest-to-goodness treasure chest.
They hoist it all the way up, and then they leave it hanging in midair right next to the clearly visible boom mic. Despite transporting this giant heavy treasure chest, they have apparently not even opened the thing, because Ross Hagen has some creative control here, so to speak.
Caldwell here wants to prolong the suspense.
I think it's a marvelous idea. We're going to put the chest on display for 1 week before we open it. That'll give the public an opportunity to anticipate what's inside.
You mean we have to wait a whole week?
A long time for this. It can't hurt to wait another week. That should really pack the crowd in for you folks.
Why don't we set up some kind of display to collect donations for the new boiler?
Now you're talking.
Can we help?
Sure.
Taking into account, of course, that there may be nothing in the chest at all. This whole dynamic, this what's in the old box, build up suspense, sort of media circus idea, this episode is obviously making a sort of sly skewering of the Geraldo Rivera Secret of Al Capone's Vault special. Now, if you don't know what that was, it was basically a teachable lesson in media hype. There was all this build-up for what might have been in this unopened vault belonging to Al Capone.
I'm Geraldo Rivera, and you're about to witness a live television event. A massive concrete vault has been discovered. Well, tonight, for the first time, that vault is going to be open live.
Brought to you by Stroh's and Stroh Light. Now you're talking good times, and Stroh's is spoken here.
And then on live television, they unlock the thing, open it, and basically the only thing in this vault were Al Capone's furry art commissions. He was into mice. It was very hush-hush at the time.
You know, to briefly review, we found some bottles, we found some other artifacts. The tunnels, or rather the vaulted space, did date back to the time of Scarface Al Capone, but I don't know.
But I did discover that there is actually a more direct inspiration for this, and actually it's more nautically based as well. There was a media event that actually probably inspired Geraldo Rivera's special as well. There was this thing about the SS Andrea Doria, which was this Italian ship that sunk, and they too found a sunken vault, and they rediscovered it and opened it on live TV with disappointing results. It's sort of interesting that one of these things is in the public memory and the other isn't, basically because one of these people doing it is now like a world-famous charlatan.
Thank you for watching. I promised all the critics that if we didn't find anything, I'd sing a song. So, Chicago, that Hovland town. All right, I'm going. I'll see you.
The mystery of Al Capone's vaults has been brought to you by Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. And by the good products and good people at the Quaker Oats Company.
Where are you going to put it? Isn't security going to be a problem?
You know, I hadn't thought of that.
I got an idea. Let's drop it in the Shark Tank. Been in Davy Jones's locker for 200 years. Another week won't hurt it.
Hey, Grant, do we really have to do that?
Probably not, but it certainly will keep the curiosity seekers at a safe distance.
Since the structure of the next act is now already established, there's time for this cutesy interlude where we get to see Houdini the Octopus in some more crazy, lovable hijinks. We see him in the process of slaughtering other animals.
It's that darn Houdini. He got out of his tank and he's into my Dungeness crabs.
We see real footage of an octopus stretching out his tentacles over live scuttling crabs and dragging them underneath its unseen mouth one by one.
What am I gonna do? I can't stand touching them things.
Well, you're not gonna get him off of them now.
I should add that Houdini the Octopus has yet again changed to a different breed and color between scenes. If I am correct that they bought the Houdini from the previous episode at like a Greek supermarket, I guess it's fair to feed this living Houdini another different denizen of the Safeway fish aisle. This is just a light comedy scene, but it feels like there are two different drafts of this script that just got slammed together here. The fact they're Dungeness crabs gives me the impression that the Boiler Chief was keeping these animals with the intention of eating them later. Like these are his lunch in this tank. But I figure someone else on the team thought it was weird that an aquarium employee was just keeping a living lunch in their tank. So they change it to the crabs being this guy's pets.
I'm sorry about your pets, Chief. All I can do is put him back in his tank. after he's done.
But if that was true, and he was currently watching all of his beloved pets get swallowed whole one by an evil cephalopod, he'd have a reaction stronger than, ooh, I oughta. I mean, if an octopus ate a cat or a dog in front of me, that'd tear me up like crazy. I mean, that's like 2 or 3 days of leftovers alone. This, in my mind, is why the Octopus Catchers Department has to be a government-funded service. It really is crazy to me that it is still a private industry stateside. The first sign that something is wrong with this whole treasure chest plan is Grant Roberts walking into the back rooms of the aquarium and coming face to face with a locksmith that Ross Hagen has hired to open this chest ahead of schedule.
I don't see any way I can get this open.
I thought we were gonna wait. You guys are worse than a bunch of kids at Christmas time.
It would be kind of anticlimactic if we had the crowd there waiting and we couldn't get the darn box open. Grant Roberts, this is Lena. A good lady to know when you lock your keys in your car.
Hi.
Hi.
At this point, I think it bears noting that whenever the antagonist is a female or the antagonist has a female associate, every single one of them has had the same hairdo. The ladies poaching the falcon eggs, Lena here, Becky.
Becky, my love.
It's the 80s, and there's a very particular look for 80s hair, so you can't really blame them. But every female bad guy in this show is just a mass of tight curls held together with super glue. The genre western pedigree is really strong in this show. They couldn't have the bad guys all have the designated black hat, so they were forced to figure out something else, and they gave all the bad guys the designated volumizing blow dry instead. Lena's actress here, Deanne Henry, will actually go on to be in 3 more episodes of Danger Bay. She's sort of like the Dave Coulier poacher in that sense. She's popped up in a few filmed in Vancouver TV shows that were recognizable to me. Adventures of Black Stallion, Sliders, of course, the Crow television series. What interested me most about looking at her filmography, though, was that she was sort of double-dipping in a sense, because she was also an actress in the 1987 revival of Sea Hunt, which was odd to me because I never knew there was a program named Sea Hunt to revive in the first place. But it turns out it was a very successful TV show in the 50s and 60s. It was about the adventures of an ex-Navy frogman, and every single episode was some new ocean-based crime or caper that he needed to fight his way out of. While the reason for why what's happening on screen is different, the premise is fundamentally the same as Danger Bay. It's about catching aquatic-based criminals. I figure that the people who owned the rights to Sea Hunt saw that people were putting 2 TVs with Danger Bay on them next to each other and whipping their head back and forth between the 2 of them so that they could give the show twice as many ratings. And they realized, well, we've got something in our IP library that is very similar to this. Let's see if we can capitalize. Let's ride this wave, so to speak. And Deanne Henry got to diversify her portfolio, so to speak. Whichever aquatic crime thriller was going to come up on top, she was going to come up on top with it. But the Sea Hunt revival never really got off the ground. It only lasted 1 season. And really, none of the people who were on that show, other than Deanne Henry, really ever showed up in the industry again. They just sort of disappeared. I don't know what happened there.
You're gonna have to pry this off at the unveiling. These old locks are very complicated. Besides, the whole thing is completely cemented with corrosion.
The Lena character says she can't open up the lock, and she walks off screen. Grant is sort of eyeing her with suspicion. And then, in this scene, Grant Roberts, who has previously only been talking shit about Ross Hagen's character behind his back, finally out and says it.
So, Grant, are you ready to apologize for your skepticism?
I was wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm sorry. You and I don't have a very good record, you know it. It goes way back to our university days. The rest of us were breaking our backs trying to learn something. You were playing poker all night, setting up dice games in the dean's office. I just don't like you, Caldwell.
What I like about this exchange is that we're now unveiling that Ross Hagen's character is not just sleazy in terms of how he presents himself. He is actually running with a sleazy crowd and doing sleazy things. This guy is getting up to all the same things that Ross Hagen characters get up to in the more adult fare. This is just the one TVY7 entry in the Ross Hagen cinematic universe.
Deadly with their hands, deadlier with their bodies. You never know what they'll come up with next. Maybe a kiss in the dark, maybe a karate chop in the neck. Well, I guess I was kind of wild back then.
For all we know, this treasure hunter character talking to Grant right now could be the same guy as in Booty Call, the buried treasure of Francisco VergaDuro. Speaking of, in this scene, Ross Hagen is wearing one of those black leather motorcycle jackets made for people who don't actually ride motorcycles. He has designer sunglasses, but he's not wearing them indoors, so he's put them in a deliberately too small front pocket, so they're still prominently displayed. And he's got his collar down to, I figure, the 6th button. He's wearing the outfit all tech CEOs wear when they don't realize their company's going to go under in 6 months.
But people grow, Grant. They change. Maybe I've learned a few hard lessons.
Well, good for you, Martin. I hope it sticks.
It's now time to put the chest in the shark tank for real.
The secret treasure of the Sonora returns to the custodians of the deep.
Total nitpick here, but the characters have previously mentioned just how well preserved this chest is and how everything will be fine.
Look, it looks like it held up pretty well.
I know it's amazing what being buried in mud will do to preserve things.
But as they drop it in with the sawtooths, this perfectly sealed, pristinely preserved chest immediately shoots out a horrifying amount of air bubbles. I mean, in the world of this show, everything in the chest is fine, but if there was ever anything well preserved in that chest before, there definitely isn't any now. Say goodbye to all of those documents, but I mean, I guess the documents are worthless. They were in Spanish. Pan away from the chest and the sawtooth sharks, and right off to the side, the gang has set up one of those transparent collection boxes with one of those big paper money counting thermometers.
This is terrific, you guys. Here, let me be the first. $11,995 to go.
Wrong. 11,994.
Don't let the dialogue of this audio medium fool you. Grant and Jonah are referring to different amounts of money here as they make their donations. Both of them on screen have just put in the same Canadian $20 bill. The only real reason I can think of as to why is that out of all of the Canadian paper money, the 20 is the only green bill. I think that they were seriously worried that American viewers on the Disney Channel really wouldn't figure out money was being exchanged here if the paper was blue or purple. I guess it means they're being more generous than their dialogue suggests. At the very least, it's better than sticking Canadian Tire money in the collection box. Similar to this one bill having 3 potential different values, I've harped on about this already, but the Vancouver Aquarium's coffers seem to be in a point where reality fluctuates in true televisual style. Putting aside the fact that the aquarium is some sort of police organization, you have to keep in mind that they're acting here like they're on their last legs and they need donations to stay afloat, when a few episodes back, somebody donated an entire island to them for free.
This is going to make an excellent research facility for us.
Yeah, I still can't believe they're giving it away.
It is odd to see a donation box for an institution that may or may not have the power of eminent domain in this universe, but I suppose it's not that much different from when people donate to the Policemen's Benevolent Association in the US on top of their tax dollars. Have you tipped your police officer today? Ross Hagen, meanwhile, is not focused on whatever filthy lucre is in the donation box. He's more interested in whatever might be in that treasure chest in the Sawtooth Shark tank, staring at the chest ominously as the sharks swim around it. Unsurprisingly, something is up, which is confirmed right after the commercial break. We fade into the aquarium parking lot, and sitting in his incredibly rectangular red convertible, Ross Hagen waits for a somehow even more rectangular car to come up alongside. The window comes down, and Lena's hairdo arrives on the scene, followed a few seconds later by Lena herself. In a move that respects the audience's intelligence, it's just taken as a given that he's gonna steal the treasure chest. They don't even introduce the idea.
Wasn't easy. This should do it.
Thanks.
The story about the lock on the chest not being able to be opened, that was just a big lie. She hands Ross Hagen a key she made the day before.
I told him I was going to be out of town until after the big grand opening. Thanks to this key you made, they'll never know the lock's been opened.
So it's taken as a given that he's going to steal the loot. The other thing that's taken as a given is that he's using the loot that he's going to steal to pay off loan sharks for his massive gambling debts.
What about the sharks?
I told those gorillas I'd pay him everything I owe them next week. I prefer compound interest to compound fractures.
I don't mean the loan sharks.
This is one of those places where casting can actually do a screenwriter's job. You could take up precious minutes of a 22-minute show with an expository scene explaining how and why this character ended up in gambling debt and to who, why this is his scheme to pay it off. Or you could cast Ross Hagen and essentially ask the audience, look at this man. Is this the face of a man who isn't in crippling gambling debt? Is this the face of a man who doesn't bet on the ponies? This isn't speculative on my part. Other directors would then go on to hire Ross Hagen for his patented gambling addiction face. He'd go on to use this particular attribute as an actor in films such as Sexual Roulette. Sexual Roulette, released in 1997 by Royal Oaks Entertainment, re-released later as Carnal Risk and Weekend in Vegas. There's no real reason for me to give these details, I just feel compelled to let everyone know that Sexual Roulette was a very real movie and Ross Hagen was very much in it.
I don't mean the loan sharks. I mean the kind in the aquarium.
Yeah, the bigger the risk, the bigger the payoff.
The treasure chest is being held in the shark tank by a chain. He doesn't have to deal with the sharks at all, he just has to pull up a chain. But you know that when he gets back to Lena, he's going to talk about it as if he fought them off with his bare hands anyway. Cut to inside the Vancouver Aquarium, and it turns out asking aquarium patrons to donate was essentially pointless.
All right, kidneys, let's show your dad and Donna where we're at.
Oh, really?
Between the beginning of the day and the end of the day, the money thermometer has leapt up to the needed 12K instantly.
You're kidding.
Isn't it great, Dad?
A corporate sponsor has chipped in the moment they found out that the aquarium needed cash in the first place.
I called every corporate sponsor I know. Finally, Demcom came through with the whole kit and caboodle.
But the thing is that the kids haven't raised up this money thermometer to the needed 12K until just right now as their dad is entering the room. They kept it down at the bottom up till now. So that means that the aquarium has been taking donations from regular well-meaning consumers all this time, while keeping the fact they're already fully funded by corporate backers on the down low. This means that Danger Bay has invented the Kickstarter strategy 30 years early. The staff of the aquarium is just openly talking about this ethically murky corporate practice that they're engaged in, and the fact that Michelle Chan is present for this scene and laughing harder about it than anybody else in the room seems eerily prescient.
That's great, George.
Hagen Beggs does a weird little Pied Piper impression with his pen as a flute here and does a big snort laugh. I genuinely don't know what this gesture to the fairy tale is supposed to mean in this context. Are you like tricking them or leading them along? I mean, the aquarium did actually need this money. Is he mind controlling the sponsors somehow? Is he gonna kidnap the sponsors' children if they don't pay? We simply don't know.
Demcom came through with the whole kit and caboodle.
For my part, I had never heard of the Demcom Corporation until now. I only knew of Demcom as the political tendency. They want to liquidate the bourgeoisie and create a classless society administered by a cadre of local Soviets, but only if Nancy Pelosi oversees it.
I'll tell the chief to go ahead and order that new boiler right away.
So we didn't need to go treasure hunting after all.
Sometimes the best place to start a treasure hunt is right in your own backyard.
This seems to me like the exact opposite of the lesson taught to us here. The benefactor in question is a giant faceless multinational. How many demcoms are in people's backyards? I mean, I suppose if you're Grant Robert, you live on a private island and you have the power to tell the police what to do. Maybe billionaires are in his backyard. Now, night has fallen in the aquarium, and it is time for Ross Hagen to spring his heist plan into action. Apparently, Lena has taught him a few more lockpicking tricks. He jimmies open an office door. He begins casing the halls of the aquarium with the smallest flashlight 1984 has to offer between his thumb and forefinger. You can tell that Ross Hagen's character is trying to be sneaky in this scene because he's wearing the stealthiest thing he's got in his repertoire, a $500 black turtleneck. He's even downgraded his shiny gold watch for a shiny silver one. That's how serious he is about stealth here. You just know that he wanted to put on the form-fitting balaclava so he could do the full diabolique and enter maximum Italian mode. Of course, by now, the Danger Bay audience realizes that Grant is going to show up here somehow and stop Ross Hagen, eventually. But of course, we need an excuse for Grant to be at the aquarium at nighttime too, so there will be the climax that we need. The next scene provides that. The thing is, all they really need to do is cut to Robert's island and have him get called on the phone with another emergency with the old boiler.
Hello? Wait, slow down a minute, Chief. What? Hang on, I'll be there as soon as I can.
And ultimately, that's what they do, but they tag a one-sentence intro to this scene that I just can't get out of my head. As this 30-second scene starts, Grant has just brought Joyce home after a night at the theater, and she drops this line.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I just can't stop contemplating this. I mean, just think about it. One of the best plays she has ever seen. We are currently watching a woman digesting the fact that a new higher bar has been set in her life.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The new personal high point for an entire medium of expression. A life-altering experience. One of the best plays she's ever seen in her life.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Right now, she is telling the man standing next to her, Grant, my preconceived notions of the limits of the dramaturgical form have been shattered beyond recognition. The trajectory of my entire existence has been irrevocably altered. Thanks to this play, I have learned that what humanity is capable of doing goes beyond even my loftiest expectations. From this night forward, Grant, I will never be the same.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah.
If there has ever been a piece of media that you've really liked, you know that obviously this is not how you talk about it. I just love how contentless and unenthusiastic such a superlative claim is made here.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
I like to imagine that they just saw something like Samuel Beckett's Endgame, and this is all they have to say about it. Like zero interpretive conversation.
Yeah.
If you were August Strindberg, and this was all you heard from the audience in the lobby when your play was done, you'd jump out a window. It's not about whether the play is simply good or bad, you as August Strindberg would think as you fell for stories. It's about how much I hate women.
That's one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah. How about a cup of coffee for the road?
Cut back to Ross Hagen at the aquarium, picking at yet another door lock. Apparently the locks at the aquarium are so bad, or he's such a good lockpick, he can just speed through every single one of them, as if the Bethesda Fallout games are accurate depictions of what lockpicking is like. For Grant's part, as he enters the Vancouver aquarium in a rush, he's got a mindset more like a Metal Gear Solid guard.
That's funny, that shouldn't be unlocked.
This door shouldn't be unlocked. Whose footprints are these? Ross Hagen sneaks past them easily. He just hides under some stairs and then gets back to work.
Chief! Thanks for coming, Doc. She's gonna go one more time. Hang on. Pull that there.
We get more Fritz Lang Metropolis shots of pipes and valves and steam coming from nowhere, but this scene is really totally perfunctory at this point. Like, they've already established that they're gonna get a new boiler, they've got the money for it. The chief brought Grant all the way from his private island to the aquarium, basically just to get a second hand to turn a valve. That's the sum total of everything that Grant actually does with the boiler this scene. Like, this is a job that basically anybody else other than Grant could be doing. Grant doesn't get bionic grip until, like, season 8.
Ha! Well, the new one arrives here next week. She should hold till then.
I could use that cup of coffee now.
Yeah.
Do you have anything smaller around here that boils water?
As she's searching for coffee, Joyce finally sees Ross Hagen screwing around with all the chains and locks without him knowing that she's there. It's sort of ironic. He's done all this lock picking and he's been hiding under stairs and all of this. And meanwhile, Joyce can just walk all the way through a doorway and then turn all the way around and exit and not get caught at all.
Come on, baby.
Despite Ross Hagen actually having a key that can just open up this lock, I guess he's in lock-picking mode because it's taking him forever to get this key to actually turn. He's still fiddling around as if he's using a hairpin. Joyce runs off to warn Grant and the boiler chief, Ross Hagen is here, he's causing trouble, which seems like they would be setting up some sort of a climax or a fight scene or a chase or something like that. But just as Ross Hagen is about to open the lock on the chest, the problem basically solves itself. Ross Hagen is so focused on doing these lock-picking maneuvers with the key to the lock that he doesn't notice that at his feet, Houdini the octopus, who is now another different breed and color, starts crawling up his leg. Houdini doesn't really trip Ross Hagen or make him slip or anything like that. When he grabs onto his leg, Ross Hagen just does a full vertical leap of fright, Scooby-Doo style, splashing into a small storage tank. When I say Scooby-Doo style, I'm not just drawing this from the ether. As Ross Hagen says as he gives his final villain speech,
I had to do it, Grant. I needed big bucks. Fast. I'd have gotten away with it, too, if it hadn't been for that octopus.
And I mean, really, with how Hanna-Barbera self-cannibalizes its shows, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns out to be a line from an actual TV show of theirs. Like, you'd be watching a Hanna-Barbera show, somebody would say, I'd have got away with it too if it weren't for that octopus, and you'd go, well, isn't that a Scooby-Doo ripoff? And then somebody next to you who is more in the know about Hanna-Barbera would go, oh, no. This is a ripoff of Jabberjaw, and Jabberjaw in turn is a ripoff of Scooby-Doo. It's far enough now from the source material that it's in the clear again. No fights necessary, no chases necessary. Really, Grant and Joyce ended up at the aquarium for no other reason than to give some quick one-liners.
Sorry, pal, you're all wet.
These small tanks keep getting used for slapstick material, but I gotta remind people that these small tanks are probably the fish equivalent of a sickbed.
There's nothing in this chest.
I get all this for nothing.
I love the fact that after all of this, Ross Hagen really does seem to find it genuinely funny that there was nothing in the chest at all. He hardly seems to care. I think that that's a great sort of character bit. Like, I think that this is a touch that Ross Hagen brought to the line of his own accord. He's played enough characters like this in his career to know that this exact type of guy would find it hilarious that he's been scammed.
It looks like some other thief got to it about 200 years before you did, Martin.
That is a hilarious happenstance. Oh well, it's not the first time the mob's broken my legs, I guess. There's always next time. Grant gives his thanks to Houdini as he slips underneath a desk where nobody can reach him.
You blew it again, Martin. Nice work, Houdini.
And this just leaves me wondering how many octopi did this show go through actually? This show is like an oceanic bloodbath at times. We've got an octopus eating crabs, we've got turtles eating octopi probably. And I mean, this one octopus character has gone through so many colors and breeds over just 2 episodes that you start wondering, did somebody on this show have a taste for takoyaki or something? So we're coming up on the end of the episode, and true to the whole Geraldo Rivera thing, the chest is empty, and it's been an ostensible publicity stunt overseen by a huckster, and Ross Hagen gets an ironic comeuppance for believing his own fabrications. It's a straightforward moral lesson, right? Don't buy into hype. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is, all of that stuff. Except there's still 2 minutes in this episode, and there is more for us to learn.
I'd like to thank you all for turning out today after the news of the unfortunate incident last night. Dr. Roberts has the full story for us.
The very next scene, Doc Roberts is giving a press conference to the media and the public who has been so enwrapped by all of this treasure chest business. And before I move ahead on this, just let's do a quick recap. They got the money for the boiler. The aquarium is still getting all this attention for the publicity stunt that Ross Hagen put together. They've got everything they wanted and more. Now that the huckster has been removed from the premises, the Roberts and the Vancouver Aquarium are free to reap all of hucksterism's benefits, with no moral qualms at all in the eyes of the show. The basis of this episode is the SS Andrea Doria and Geraldo Rivera's The Vaults of Al Capone special, famous real-world lessons against buying into hype, but it seems Rick Drew watched these specials and was totally fine with getting scammed. Instead, he was mad that it was someone like Geraldo Rivera doing the scamming. Why couldn't someone trustworthy like Edward R. Murrow lie to me about Al Capone's vault?
It's empty. Look at that.
You see, it's empty.
By its nature, a paradoxical proposition. Why can't I get scammed by somebody honest? If Edward R. Murrow cleaned me out in a 3-card Monty racket, I'd be pleased as punch. So before this press conference scene starts, the Roberts in the aquarium have already benefited massively from all the things that Ross Hagen, the antagonist of this episode, has done. And then on top of it all, totally unnecessarily, it turns out the treasure was actually there the whole time.
A little history lesson. See, the kings of Europe used to like to keep their gold close at hand, but not in a conventional form. French royalty, for instance, used to weave gold into their bed curtains. Under the iron straps on this chest, which accounts for its great weight, it's all solid gold. You scrape some off. If you look down here, you can see the gold.
And with that reveal, the episode, it seems to knowingly try to wrap up real fast. Now that the aquarium is flush with Spanish gold, Grant is finally able to afford a solution to the Houdini escaping his enclosure problem, buying some thumb screws you can get for 99 cents at the Rona.
Release this, like this. And when we're done, we just lock it up again, like this.
But the best laid plans of mice and men and all of that, you know, Houdini starts climbing up Grant's leg anyway.
You locked the barn door too late.
He seems to have become very attached to you.
And everybody starts laughing way too hard.
Oh, you think this is funny, don't you?
Like cackling like witches. And so, as the heroes of this show all laugh in a truly psychotic manner, all I can think about is what the treasure being real in this episode actually implies here. So let's zoom out here for a moment. When Ross Hagen showed up at the start of the episode, what did he say? Here's a manifest I found that probably took a good few years of research. There's a treasure under the water. It's real. If we get this treasure, the aquarium will make lots of money and get lots of attention. From the very start, this was presented as a fabulous scam because it came out of the mouth of Ross Hagen, this supposed inveterate flimflammer, and it's all turned out to be entirely true. But the show has just treated things as if Ross Hagen has received his just desserts for buying into all of his false hype, even though all of his hype was actually correct here.
You blew it again, Martin. If you look down here, you can see the gold.
Does this undercut the message of this episode about not buying into hype? I don't think so. I think the message is actually something more complex than that. Here's what I think. I'm of the opinion that just as the money in the wallets of TV characters fluctuate all the time, the physical laws of Danger Bay's universe made it so that this gold could never appear until Ross Hagen was unable to get a share of it. Until the very moment Ross Hagen was put behind bars or had the triads take his kneecaps or both, that treasure chest was actually empty. It's true Ross Hagen did commit a bad deed when he tried to steal the treasure, but let's be honest, he needed to be sacrificed, sent away, to make the gold real in the first place. This only cements the true message of this show, that being good and deserving of nice things is not a matter of your deeds, and it is not a matter of your intent. It's a matter of whether you are a good person by preordainment. It's very Calvinist in that way.
But people grow, Grant. They change. Maybe I've learned a few hard lessons.
Well, good for you, Martin. I hope it sticks. You blew it again, Martin.
Even though no actual lie was told here, the universe still sees Ross Hagen as a liar at a transcendental level, and he must receive a liar's punishment, because he's just not the right kind of person.
It's not the hunt, it's the hunter.
And Grant Roberts, who went along with everything Ross Hagen proposed, all he did was say he was reluctant about it a bunch, he gets everything he wanted, and he deserves it because he is a predestined virtuous one.
Are you ready to apologize for your skepticism?
I was wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm sorry.
This is really the only legitimate way one can read this episode and the reveal at the end of it. Like with the tennis episode before it, the morals of the Danger Bay universe would be incoherent unless you correctly bought into the premise that the Roberts family exists above humanity and its petty morality. As Grant Roberts shaves off a chunk of this treasure chest to show the solid gold hiding underneath, the episode is saving us from some childish moral platitude to not get suckered in by frauds, or not to be a fraud yourself. Instead, we get a real mature lesson for real mature adults, that fraud is okay if the universe has already chosen you to be good no matter what.
What have you got against the fellow anyway?
He has the credibility of a sand shark.
I called every corporate sponsor I know.
That's great, George.
If you get to benefit from someone else's fraud, even better, you get to feel less bad about it in the end. As God's chosen marine biologists laugh really, really hard at the concept of an octopus grabbing at something, we see the reality of things. You're either born in the circle or born out of the circle. If you weren't selected, you'd better save some time struggling against it and let the universe's chosen few have their way. The sooner you get your predestined punishment out of the way, the better. Way better lesson, way more smart and mature. This is what the kids of Canada need to learn. So that's another Danger Bay episode in the tank. As a sort of epilogue, I guess, Ross Hagen, this was the last sort of clean program that he did in a very long time. Not until the 2000s when he ended up doing some family-friendly, straight-to-DVD, Roger Corman-produced movies. He would have been a great fit for those. I mean, every second actor in a Roger Corman family film has either 3 X's in their name somewhere or they're named after liquor. But as for the near future, Ross Hagen, he got his cigarette paycheck. He was kind of miffed about it. He got paid in cools, it turned out. And then he was free to go his merry way and work on such productions as Virtual Desire, Midnight Tease 2, The Phantom Empire, which is better known as the movie where Sybil Danning is like 8 feet tall and has a Power Girl boob window, Sorceress 2, The Temptress, The Escort 3, Nicole Roberts is lounging poolside tending to her cybernetic implants when her brother Jonah pops up on holo screen. Hey Nicole, what's going on with your life? Nothing much, Jonah. I just finished buying tickets for the Ocean Hellman benefit concert at the Las Vegas Dome. I'm really excited. Ocean Hellman really is the voice of a generation, and all the money is going to a good cause. Really? Tell me more. Sure, Jonah. All the concert's proceeds are going to the Ocean Hellman Foundation for solving the Peru problem. It'll fund a new plan to loosen the Peruvian regime's stranglehold on its population. the charity money goes toward 34 million copies of Ocean Hellman's newest CD. That's one copy for every citizen of Peru. Then all the CDs will be airdropped over the country's most populous areas. Ocean Hellman's music will be a major blow to the Peruvian propaganda machine. For too long, Peruvian ears have been subjected to pan flutes and charangos, instruments that have been scientifically proven to make you more authoritarian. There's no question that listening to Ocean Hellman's new experimental noise album will unshackle the Peruvian mind, urging them to liberate themselves from their government's tyrannical rule, as well as liberating their arsenic supply from onerous trade regulations and ungenerous prices. Everyone should buy a copy. Wow, Nicole, that's really interesting. As for me, I've been getting really interested in cryptocurrency, a brand new way to invest. Have you ever heard of the new crab coin? No, Jonah, I haven't, but it sounds really interesting. Tell me all about it. Crabcoin is the hottest new blockchain investment on the market. That's because not only is it a solid asset that's sure to increase in value, but ownership of Crabcoin gives you access to the Chris Crab Digital Casino, an online gambling parlor situated in the Cayman Islands. Because I, Jonah Roberts, own Crabcoin, I can bet crypto and fiat currency on hundreds of my favorite slot machines, perfectly emulated. Wow, Jonah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to buy as many crab coins as I can. How could an investment like that possibly go down? Exactly, Nicole. Crabcoin is the perfect asset for anyone to invest their disability, Medicare, or pension checks. Because they're tangentially related to CrabTech LLC, there's a likelihood, but not a guarantee, that anything that benefits CrabTech, for instance, a sharp decrease in the price of arsenic, will also increase Crabcoin's value. Wow, Jonah, does that mean anybody who owns Crabcoin stands to benefit from Peru getting punished for its allegiance with Uxaraz, the sea urchin god? Uxaraz, the sea urchin? Oh, right, him. Yes, Nicole, it does. Cool. Okay, Jonah, good hearing from you. See you next time. Pushing a button on her wrist, Nicole closes the vid screen. Feeling the sun on her face, she looks up at the sky and takes a deep sigh of comfort. Hey, look, angels. So there it is, another modern Danger Bay episode. I gotta say, I'm very excited for all the brand new products and business opportunities coming down the pike. I'm weighing my options as to whether I actually go and invest in Crabcoin. I am interested in all of those slot machines, but it's really contingent on whether they've got the Brink-themed slot machine, Resistance Roulette. Whoever was editing this episode did a very good job, I must say. Chris Crab and Ocean Hellman have famously refused to be in the same room as each other for the last 15 years. They don't even want to look at each other's faces. So, stitching these separate takes together to make it look like they're actually having a conversation is an impressive undertaking. Well, that's it for me today. See you all on the other side. Remember that you can always contact me through my socials. I'm Chasm Cave on both Blue Sky and on Twitter. Finally, be sure to check out the KS Media Patreon. We've got some brand new and exciting stuff that's coming out for you guys pretty soon. My personal favorite is a KS Media exclusive. We've got Geraldo Rivera opening up a Russian nesting doll. It's taken about 12 hours so far. It's a big multi-parter. It takes him about 3 hours to open each doll. He won't stop talking. He really does think there is something in the middle of that doll. It's quite amazing. Anyway, I'll see you all soon. Danger comes from below. See you guys.
Infinite Danger was written, recorded, and produced by Will Riley in association with KS Media LLC. The theme is derived from Amore Grande, Amore Profondo by Il Guardiano d'Alfaro. We can be contacted through Twitter or Blue Sky at KASMKAVE or through kittysneezes.com. Danger Bay was produced by Danger Bay Productions Incorporated in association with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Telefilm Canada, and the Disney Channel. Support Infinite Danger and other fine projects at patreon.kittysneezes.com. This has been a Kitty Sneezes production.
Danger! Danger!
Danger.
Danger hasn't come home yet.
Danger! Danger!
KittySneezes.com in color.